The American Old West was a land where dust and destiny walked hand in hand, where every sunrise over the frontier carved another line into the unending saga of survival, vengeance, greed, justice, and blood-soaked glory, and where the deadliest gunslingers carved their names with cold, steel and hot lead into the unforgiving soil of a continent still young enough to bruise, and long before the legends were tamed into history books and Hollywood tales. They lived as men, complex, brutal, brilliant, desperate, and deadly, each one driven by a force that echoed louder than gunfire in the canyons. These were the figures whose shadows stretched across saloons and prairies like warnings from the devil himself. Men so fast and so feared that their reputations arrived in a town before they did, whispered in poker rooms, muttered in sheriff's offices, and prayed about in the trembling voices of stagecoach travelers. Across dusty trails from Texas to Montana, you could find their names carved into wanted posters, burned into the memories of survivors, and etched into the trembling heartbeat of the American frontier. This story begins not with their deaths, but with the storm before the thunder, the slow rise of violence that shaped each of the 15 deadliest gunslingers history would ever know. Before they were legends, they were boys shaped by hardship, a father murdered at dusk, a home burned by raiders, a war that ripped innocence away like cattle from a stampede. The West was an open wound, and into its bleeding soil stepped men who refused to be forgotten. Their tales rise like smoke from frontier campfires. A young drifter practicing his draw until the skin on his fingertips bled. A former soldier whose nightmares drove him into the saloon where killing became his only peace. A quiet ranch hand who found justice too slow and decided to deliver his own. A gambler who could count cards better than he could count the bodies left in his wake. And a lawman who earned respect not because he wore a badge, but because he carried death in both holsters and spoke only when the silence needed breaking. These men came from different corners of the frontier, but all shared a single truth. Survival meant shooting faster than the next man. Towns like Dodge, Tombstone, Abilene, Deadwood, and El Paso didn't rise peacefully. They crawled into existence surrounded by outlaws, rustlers, bandits, and killers whose every step could rewrite a town's fate. Main streets became battlegrounds at sundown. Saloon floors carried bloodstains that no amount of whiskey could wash away, and boot heels clicked across wooden planks in rhythms that foretold whether a stranger was here to drink, rob, avenge, or die. In the distance, coyotes sang to the moon like ancient prophets, their cries echoing across canyons where smoke lingered longer than the memory of a dying man's last breath. Out here, law was a suggestion and justice a luxury. Gold, cattle, and land were reasons worth killing for. Betrayal could come from a friend you'd known for 20 winters, and a poker bluff could end in a pine box. Yet for all the bloodshed, there was something hypnotic about the frontier, a raw, untamed energy that called to men who walked the line between sinner and savior. Some of these gunslingers sought fame, others sought revenge, some hungered for control, and a few were simply born with darkness in their hearts. But all of them became weapons shaped by the land itself. Their stories intertwined like braided leather reins, each path crossing another's, sometimes ending in deadly duels, sometimes forging grudging alliances, sometimes sparking feuds that roared across years and miles like wildfire. And though the West was a harsh judge, it was also the only place where a man could transform from nobody to legend overnight, if he survived the night. As we step deeper into the dust-choked roads of the frontier, we see the world as they saw it. The clinking of bottles behind bar counters, the creak of swinging saloon doors, the sharp smell of gunpowder lingering in the air, the rattle of spurs echoing like a countdown in a tense standoff, and the hum of a town holding its breath as two men decide fate with a single draw. Their boots may be gone, their bones may have long turned to dust, but their names, these 15 names, still crack like lightning in the sky of American history. And as we begin with the first of these infamous legends, remember this: in the Old West, death was cheap, bullets were currency, and reputation was the only shield a man could trust. So lean closer, partner, because the trail we're riding into tonight is wild, bloody, and unforgettable, and before this journey ends, you'll know exactly why these 15 gunslingers were the deadliest to ever stalk the American frontier. And if you're ready for more stories forged in gunsmoke, grit, and glory, don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you never miss the next tale. whispered by the ghosts of the Old West. The night settled over the frontier like a cloak of fate, and with it rose the names of the 15 deadliest gunslingers who carved their stories into the American Old West with the precision of a bullet, splitting the quiet dawn, each man stepping out of history's shadows as if summoned by the very land that birthed them. Their tales were not born in comfort or peace, but in the raging fire of survival, where every choice felt like a loaded revolver pointed at the heart of destiny. These men, outlaws, lawmen, soldiers, drifters, renegades, and restless spirits, walked a razor-thin line between heroism and infamy. On any given day, they could be defenders of justice or harbingers of death, and the West accepted them with the same cold indifference it offered everyone else. Towns trembled when they arrived. Saloons fell silent, poker games froze mid-deal, and even the boldest cowboys felt a knot tighten in their throats, for each gunslinger carried a reputation that spoke louder than their boots on the wooden planks. They weren't remembered because they killed, they were remembered because nobody who faced them could ever forget the moment they stood eye to eye with death. These were men who could draw faster than a heartbeat, who trained until their arms ached, who rode through storms of bullets and came out alive when others fell like wheat before a scythe. Some of them carried personal codes etched deeper than the grooves of their revolvers. Never shoot an unarmed man, never fire without warning, never back down from a challenge. Others embraced chaos, finding exhilaration in the echo of a gunshot that declared them masters of their fate. And yet, even among the lawless, a strange kind of honor thrived, because in the West your name was your legacy, and a man with no honor had a name no one cared to remember. The deadliest of them roamed landscapes as wild as their spirits. Scorching deserts where mirages danced like specters, snow-capped passes where breath turned to frost, bustling silver towns pulsing with greed, and lonely cabins tucked into pine forests where silence hung heavier than sin. Their showdowns were the lifeblood of the frontier, moments when time slowed, dust swirled, fingers twitched above holsters, and bystanders held their breath as if the wind itself dared not interfere. A duel wasn't merely a test of speed. It was a test of soul. One man walked away, one man didn't, and the ground beneath their boots drank the proof. These 15 gunslingers shaped the myth of the West, each one a storm in his own right. The gambler who never lost, the ex-soldier haunted by war, the outlaw who rode like a ghost in the moonlight, the sheriff whose stare froze trouble in its tracks, the rancher turned avenger whose rage burned hotter than desert sun, the drifter who spoke little but let his pistol speak enough for 10 men, and the unpredictable killer whose motives remained a riddle even to those who feared him. Together they form a tapestry of dust, steel, smoke, and legend, a testament to a time when survival demanded courage, sharper than any blade. As their stories collide across lawless plains, blood-stained saloons, crooked mining camps, and borderlands where justice rarely bothered to show its face, one truth becomes clear. The Old West wasn't built by peaceful men. It was built by warriors with nerves of iron, men who stared death in the eye and dared it to blink first. And as we ride deeper into their lives, each more gripping, more ruthless, and more unforgettable than the last, remember that the frontier never forgave the weak, never rewarded the timid, and never allowed a lie to live longer than the man who told it. So saddle up, partner, because the legend of the 15 deadliest gunslingers is just getting started. And if you're hungry for more raw, untamed history forged in fire and gunpowder, make sure you subscribe to the channel so you never miss the next tale from the heart of the American Old West.